there's a buzzword that gets thrown around way too much of design for manufacturing and assembly. A great analogy is with cars. Like, you can't walk into a Tesla dealership and pound your fist on the table and demand a Hemi, because that's not what they make. And that's, even if they wanted to make it, they've made an investment to make something different. It's our job to help have the information out there, but it's your job to educate yourself. Maybe I want to work with this one manufacturer and they make a 60-foot long product. So do I really need my walls to be 62 feet apart? Or I think that is a little bit of a different way of thinking in terms of design and consuming of construction materials, but is the way that you have to think about these mass timber projects.
This is the Mass Timber Group Show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Brady, and we talk to sustainable building experts. Today we caught up with Andrew Stiffman, the Director of Design and Construction for Kalesnikoff, one of North America's most advanced, vertically integrated mass timber producers.
Kalesnikoff is a huge player in the mass timber industry and growing fast. Their 110,000 square foot plant in the Pacific Northwest offers CLT, Glulam panels, and Glulam beams. Andrew talked about their wide range of project types and industry trends.
But before we jump in, if you want to learn more about building with mass timber and how it can help advance your career, we're hosting the second annual Mass Timber Group Summit this summer in Denver. We've got 30 plus sessions, 3 amazing networking parties, and building tours of the coolest projects in Denver. Check out the link below to learn more and save your seat. And if you like these interviews, hit that subscribe button. It's the biggest compliment you could give, and it really helps us spread the word about mass timber. So with that, let's get into it.
So Kalesnikoff is a 4th generation family-owned business located in British Columbia. It is a wood products manufacturing business that's focused on value add. I think obviously we're here to talk about mass timber, so we'll talk lots about that. But to talk about mass timber, I think you really have to understand the history of the business and what brought us to that point. So the company was founded 85 years ago by Russian immigrants fleeing the Russian Revolution and settling in British Columbia. And essentially they settled in the West Kootenays and started off forest logging. So they'd go off into the bush, log all week, drop the logs off at local wood-fired refinery, and go back and do it all over again. With each generation of family ownership, the family kind of sought to add value and stability to that business of the primary extraction, of bringing the resource out of the bush to be burned. So from that became more of a mountainside mill operation. From that, the sawmill was really born. Further to that, remanufacturing, and in particular, most relevant to mass timber would be lam stock manufacturing, which is candidate lumber stock that makes glue laminated beams. And then from there, the full expansion into mass timber manufacturing, subcontracting, design assist, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's kind of the history of the company.
And why did you guys decide to jump into mass timber? Like, what was the internal conversation with leadership to say, hey, this is something that we want to pursue? And then, because you guys are kind of taking over, you guys are gobbling up market share left and right. So like, what was the foundational decision that pushed the company into this world?
Yeah, thanks. I think we timed it really well. I think that at the time that the 4th generation, which is the current executive of the company of Kalesnikoffs, were taking over the business from the 3rd. Obviously, sawmilling's tough business. Like we're seeing right now, that business it's very cyclical. It can be quite boom and bust. We're seeing curtailments at sawmills. We're seeing mills close regionally, and that's really tough. So I think that the key word that was really on the minds was stability, and bringing stability into that business by consuming a significant portion of the mill's output and adding further value to that wood basket by bringing it directly to construction products and projects, and offering those types of solutions would be a good sustainable customer for the mill. And the idea was to really stabilize that business. At the same time, like I said, I think we timed it really well. Building codes were changing to allow taller mass timber buildings. Mass timber I talk about it being in its 2nd renaissance now, where the 1st renaissance was bringing over the material from Europe and kind of understanding what is CLT, what Glulam has been around for a while, but how do we build full structures out of this engineered material? 2nd renaissance is taking that and making it more competitive in the marketplace. And I think that that's what we're in now. And we've really benefited from being a part of that market shift.
And what are you guys seeing in the market for demand right now? Like, where are you guys really focusing? Hey, we're going to get back to the podcast in just a second. But first, I have a question for you. Are you somebody looking to build a mass timber project? If the answer is yes, then you need to put together an experienced team.
Our partners at Cornerstone Timber Frames are leaders in heavy timber construction and have 30 plus years of experience, which means you can trust them to get the job done right.
They collaborate with Nordic Structures to bring you the highest quality FSC certified mass timber available. They also have some of the most advanced fabrication technology in the industry, so your project goes up smoothly without costly on-site modification or delays.
That means they have the experience, network, and technology to make your next mass timber project a success. Learn more about Cornerstone Timber Frames by clicking the link in the show notes below.
I think we're definitely seeing that this is a regional business. When we first started, we were very much attracted to the shiny objects. So the big projects in New York, let's chase that. Why not? Now that we understand the business a little more and the cost drivers and cost sensitivities, being regional makes a ton of sense. Fortunately for us, there's a ton of great projects regionally. And it's interesting. I think that our order file and our pipeline is so diverse in terms of what we're actually building. So we have schools, we have hospital structures, we have multifamily, mid-rise, we have tall multifamily, we've got the office campuses. We kind of have a little bit of everything and a really nice mix. And obviously a good portion of that is intentional to be diversified and to kind of recession proof ourselves. But also a lot of that is just a reflection of the aggregate demand out there, like that we're seeing the material and the technology come out of the niche and more into the mainstream.
So you talked about New York, and the plant though is all regionally out in the, I guess it would be the Pacific Northwest, right? Right in the Vancouver area.
Yeah, we're about 8 hours east of Vancouver. So for a good geographical reference, 8 hours dead east of Vancouver, BC, or 3 hours due north of Spokane.
Okay. And so New York is basically on the polar opposite end of the United States. A lot of people, when they think of mass timber, they think that they need to be regionally very close to the supplier, but that kind of debunks that myth right there. Are you able to touch, every corner of the United States, or will you kind of set yourself in these regions like in the United States or in Canada where it just seems to work a little bit better?
I like to joke that we enjoy causing trouble on the East Coast every once in a while. And we do. We're regionally focused. So I think I take the Rocky Mountains and look west down into Texas, up into the Canadian provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, to an extent Manitoba. I think that that's going to always be our core markets. And a lot of that is very logistically driven, but also some of it's competitively driven. I think that there's more than enough demand in those markets to sustain us as we're seeing, but certainly we're regionally focused. Like that doesn't mean that a job that may be a few miles closer to one manufacturer than the next, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's your best choice as the building owner or the decision maker of where to go for your supply. It might be better suited to a different manufacturer for other reasons, but certainly I think thinking of this as a regional industry is really prudent.
What are those decisions that people need to distinguish between when picking a manufacturer? Like, obviously we can talk about if you're going to source company from a Kalesnikoff and build in Florida, you have to transport it all the way across the continent. Are there other factors that go into that inside of maybe the mass timber itself or the product?
Yeah, there definitely are. I think there's a buzzword that gets thrown around way too much of design for manufacturing and assembly. I think coming to this industry from more traditional construction methods, I was pretty skeptical of what that. To me, it sounded like a buzzword. I didn't think it meant a hell of a lot, but I think what that really means is that a great analogy is with cars. Like you can't walk into a Tesla dealership and pound your fist on the table and demand a Hemi, because that's not what they make. And that's, even if they wanted to make it, they've made an investment to make something different. So as the specifier, as the consumer, I think that it's our job to help have the information out there, but it's your job to educate yourself to understand that, hey, maybe, for instance, I have a 90-foot span here and one manufacturer makes a 60-foot long product, or maybe I want to work with this one manufacturer and they make a 60-foot long product. So do I really need my walls to be 62 feet apart, or could I live with the 60 and make my life easier? I think that is a little bit of a different way of thinking in terms of design and consuming of construction materials, but is the way that you have to think about these mass timber projects.
For somebody off the street or somebody interested, you carry a couple titles and, wear a couple hats like director of design and construction at Kalesnikoff or senior business development manager. Where are you at in the design phase? Are you helping with design or are you more or less kind of behind the scenes trying to push Kalesnikoff into whatever chapter that they're going into?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an individual within the company, I wear a lot of hats, like you said. I think the better way to answer that would be, as a company, what are we trying to do? And I think what I've really tried to do with our team is build a team that can be nimble to adding value and solving the customer's problems. So I don't want to make a company that feels like you're just a cog in our machine. And you might come to us and you say, hey, I need 10 CLT panels of these dimensions. I always felt like we needed to be able to profitably just sell you that. Up the flip side, and I don't need to design that. Like, I can just sell you a truck of CLT. Like, that's awesome. On the flip side, maybe you need some support and you want us to help with the engineering or even just the coordination or the design assist, is that buzzword, of your building. We've got the team to do that as well. But we're flexible. We don't have to approach projects in any one way. We really try to set up our team to be capable at doing a lot of different things well.
So what makes you guys different from any other manufacturer that you guys are competing with?
I think probably the most obvious and important way to answer that would be our integration to the fiber supply. So like I said, obviously our humble roots starting as a wood products company, we still own and operate that sawmill. That's a hugely important part of our business corporately. We consume at the mass timber plant only material made by the mill. We're the mill's biggest customer, but certainly not its only customer. Being connected to the resource and being connected to the raw material input is so important for our quality and our diversity of products, as well as our stability. Like, for instance, we saw lumber pricing be extremely volatile during COVID and subsequent to that. Because of our business model being tied back to the mill, we were able to effectively insulate our customers through that issue. And unfortunately, we saw two key competitors fall down with, of course, the lumber pricing was a huge contributor to those failures. But during the same time, we were able to be profitable because of the control of the resource and making good planning decisions throughout that volatility. So I think that I can't understate the importance of that, and certainly well precedented in Europe, but maybe hasn't made its way into North American mass timber industry as much. We tend to think of mass timber as a construction technology, but it's really a wood product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we hear a lot when people are talking about why didn't we go with mass timber was that like long-term price stability, if you will, because if you're doing a massive project, it might take you 18 months or 2 years before panels start coming off the press and then getting shipped out. And so if we have a quote here and you don't control the fiber supply going in, then you're at the mercy of the market. And what's that do 18 months out? And then the risk is just so big. And so what you're saying is because you guys are vertically integrated from the woodlands to the mill to the mass timber plant, you guys are able to mitigate that risk. Is that correct?
Exactly. You said that smarter than I could have, but effectively by controlling the resource and having that stability of order file for the mill, we kind of know what our costs are going to be during that time period. So we can hold your price throughout that process. And we're like, the mass timber being a stabilizing force of the business is super important to us. So we're able to actually guarantee that price point. Obviously there's commercial terms when you place an order with us, but provided all the commercial terms are met and we each do what we said we're going to do, we can guarantee your price point throughout the duration of your project. And I think that's a pretty attractive selling point.
And were you able to go through like the COVID, like the ups and downs of like, so I don't know, a lot of people maybe don't know, I'm a lumber broker, so I buy and sell lumber, and the market historically shot through the roof like nobody has ever seen before in life. And then it crashed all the way to the bottom, and then it cycled all the way back up and it did it again, and it crashed all the way back to the bottom. And now we're at the bottom of a historic, over the 3 years of these historic run-ups that there's no no way else to say it. It's get the pants off of people. And so through that time where these historic highs and lows were coming into place, you were able to kind of honor those order files because of the infrastructure that you have.
That's exactly right. And I think the flip side that we're seeing now is more interestingly viewed through the lens of the sawmill, when we're seeing that it's a tough time to be a sawmill. You can't sugarcoat that. Like I got a lot of empathy for being a mill right now. There's a lot of factors that contribute to that, but objectively, it's a really tough time to be a mill. But because our mill has the mass timber business, which has been stable and continuing to grow and continuing to be profitable, that's been a huge help for the mill to remain viable during that time period. So I think that we've seen both extremes in a really short period of time. It's been a wild ride. And honestly, like if we didn't do that again, I think we'd all be okay with that. But we've seen the business model be stressed as hard as you can push it in both extremes and perform well. So we feel really comfortable and excited about the idea. And I think it's working. I think one thing that's also a great differentiator for us with mass timber is we made a manufacturing plant, and the investment we made in that facility was to manufacture CLT panels and Glulam beams. But we always recognize that that's not how you sell. Like you can't just do that. You have to support your customers to know how to use that, because purchasing a CLT panel or Glulam beam is complex. There's a lot of detail that goes into it in terms of engineering knowledge and construction know-how to put it together, and a lot of steel widgets and screws from Europe. And there's a lot that goes into these packages to have them fit together and be successful. So for us, we also, in starting that plant and investing a lot of technology in the plant being very productive, we wanted to have a support team to help our customers really use the plant to its fullest and get the most benefit. So we have the project management, we have the design, we have the engineering, we have all that in-house, so that when you come to us with your big project, like the ones we'll talk about in a minute here, we're not just selling you a product, we're offering you a solution. We're helping to support your project. So I think that is also a pretty key differentiator for us.
Yeah. Well, you guys are also involved in some pretty impressive projects that obviously started the planning phase during COVID and are now coming to fruition. What are some of those projects you guys have delivered lately?
We've been able to tackle some pretty cool projects. Right now, we're just wrapping up the Timberview Tower in Portland, which is, I think, the tallest mass timber project in Portland. That's a super cool structure, hybridized with a lot of steel, both in gravity and lateral. So it was a really collaborative effort between us, the steel subcontractor, the general contractors, the designers. That's a super cool project. Right in your hometown, the First Security Bank is just an awesome and incredibly visible project for the town of Missoula. We've got some great work going on north of the border. We're about to start at what they're calling the Hive, or we call Keith Drive, which will be the headquarters for Nature's Path organic food products right in downtown Vancouver. That's a 12-story building with no concrete cores. So mass timber shear walls, as well as Glulam brace connections that are seismically dampened by the tectonus seismic devices. So super techie project, really far out on the design, and some pretty incredible milling that's going into that thing. At the same time, we're also supporting a ton of multifamily projects that maybe don't have the same street appeal as the ones I just said, but are incredibly important to housing and to just helping to solve this housing crisis and bring more units to the market. We're doing a ton of mid-rise work that tends to be CLT, floor plates over light frame, prefabricated wood walls. And it's a great part of our order file. It's super efficient. We have the ability to really tune those panel configurations to get them through the plant quickly and keep pricing down, as well as a lot of great benefits to that consumer in terms of speed of construction and quality of the end product. So quite a diversity of projects that we're working on.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the tallest buildings in the Pacific Northwest you guys just worked on. The bank that's actually in my backyard. I drive by it basically every day. It's super cool. I'm excited to get in there and tour that one. And then the Hive, like, man, if people haven't seen the renderings of that thing, it is so cool. It literally looks like it's like honeycombed, right? Like you literally sliced a beehive in half, and that's what it looks like. When we first started kind of pushing the LinkedIn, that was like one of the first projects I saw, and I was like, man, this thing is sweet. So we'll definitely throw some pictures up on the screen so people can see what that looks like. But the multifamily aspect is something that Nick and I are super passionate about. And I actually did an interview with a couple developers out of Iowa, and they're using that exact same thing. And I think one of the things that people maybe misconstrue when they're talking about, I want to use mass timber, is it doesn't have to be all mass timber. Like hybrid systems are probably way more common than fully structural mass timber. And if you can put those floor plates on top of light frame walls, like you can go so fast. And I know developers really appreciate it, because outside of the speed of construction, the one thing that these developers in specific were talking about is when you run your mechanical, your HVAC, your plumbing, all that kind of stuff, oftentimes they'll leave it exposed up above. And so later down the road, the maintenance costs for that are also dramatically lower because you don't have to go in there and rip out drywall. You don't have to access different things. You don't have to route mechanical through really big beams or around it. And so it sounds like you guys are seeing that floor plate light frame wall system be pretty popular in multifamily developments. Is that correct?
Totally. And growing quickly. I think that's a market center we've actually been, or sorry, a product type that we've really been encouraging the broader mass timber industry to pay more attention to and help develop that business case for developers that are maybe doing mid-rise multifamily for rent or for sale product, and their light framing those floors for the most part, that's hard work. Like I've built those projects too, and that's slow going. It's tough work. It's very technical. And I feel that this is a really great solution that just needs a little more attention to help it get a little more into the mainstream even. But I mean, already we got a lot of great order file for it. I just think that it could benefit more people than they know, right?
Your project portfolio is very diverse. One of the projects that really caught my eye, we have an affinity for residential and everything, but the USAA Warehouse, can you speak to that? How did you land that deal? I mean, to people that don't know, USAA is a massive bank, very military friendly bank. I have a USAA account. Me and Brady are both veterans, military. And so kind of speaks to our heart a little bit, but it's 161,000 square foot industrial warehouse in Dallas, Texas. And I was just so curious how you got that in front of them to even know that mass timber was a possibility.
Yeah. So we can't take a ton of credit for that. We came in on that job. So contractually, we were a sub of a sub to Timber Lab, who is the mass that they really did all the heavy lifting there, and our hats off to those guys for bringing mass timber as a solution to that group. I think that USA understands and understood the importance of embodied carbon in their portfolio. And I just wanted to try doing something a little more sustainable for that product type as compared to typical tilt wall panel. So that was the first of its kind. As everyone knows, it's a really well publicized job. I think from our perspective, it was a great success. It went really well on the construction side, and it'd be great to hear kind of how the building's doing for USAA, and hopefully it met all their objectives. But that's an industry segment that, since having the opportunity to participate on that project, we've seen a ton of interest, and we built our own shop expansion last summer. And of course I used CLT for the walls, and I tilted them up just like I know how from my tilt days. And I think that there's a ton of benefit to that product type. And we're just trying to be supportive of the people that have the decision-making ability to bring that more into the mainstream rate.
What kind of dimensions are you guys producing CLT and Glulam in?
One of the other key differentiators of our manufacturing line is we invested in what we would call a high frequency press. Contrast that with what you would call a cold press. Cold pressing CLT is very similar to how, if you were to make CLT in our garage, how you would do it. So you take the boards, you probably plane them, joint them, get them nice and square and tight, apply glue, apply pressure, and wait for the glue to set. If it's cold out, it's going to take longer. Hot out, it's going to run away and go faster. You also have to build a press that's the widest dimension and the biggest dimension of the largest panel you want to make. And then every press cycle, you have to fill that press, or else you're losing throughput on your charge, because it doesn't take any more or less time to cold press a very small panel than a large panel just in press. Contrast with our technology, high frequency, we're pressing in 4-meter steps, and we're cooking the panel basically with microwave to heat up the glue bonds so that the glue cures. And so for us, it's just a calculation of volume. So a smaller panel will press quicker, a wider panel will press a little slower, but it's just seconds per cubic meter. So our throughput isn't as influenced by the size. that press also has 4 feet of stroke. So it presses in 4-meter increments, like I said, roughly 14 feet or whatever that is. And then 4 feet of stroke. So we can press between, say, 8 feet and just shy of 12, 11'6" with almost equally as efficiently, because the side plates stroke in and out. So for us, the answer is basically thinking metric better. I'm trying to convert here, but 2,500 millimeters to 3,500 millimeters in width, up to 18 meters long. And within that 2,500 to 35, certainly there are some manufacturing nuances where some widths are better than others, but for the most part, we offer a ton of flexibility in that range. And that's really a pretty big range when you chase that down onto your floor plate.
And are you guys using traditional 2x input materials? So your panels are, 3-5 layers made out of 2x material?
Yeah, it's typically 35 millimeter molds. So a 2x comes out 38, and you have a 3 millimeter allowance for planing. So we also see some panels that use thinner cross layers, which we do our best to kind of educate the design community that just because the panel's thinner doesn't necessarily mean it's cheaper. You lose a lot of efficiency in all phases of the manufacturing process with that, but typically 35 and 17 millimeter multiples for our panels.
Got it. And when we wind the conversation back to like optimizing your design for, if you had a 62-foot span versus a 60-foot span, is there benefits to maximizing panel dimensions for your project versus chunking them up into smaller, more manageable pieces?
There totally is. Yeah, we obviously logistics are an important part of this business, and you have to be conscious of that and understand what challenges you might be creating for yourself down the road. But almost invariably, I found that a larger panel that results in fewer picks and fewer discrete manufacturing pieces will almost always be of net benefit to the project. Certainly, keeping in mind, if you want just-in-time delivery in downtown Seattle, probably an 11-foot 6-wide panel, you should maybe reconsider whether you really need that. But for the most part, thinking bigger is better, I think, is absolutely accurate.
You're a massive operation, and there's a lot of this industry is just getting started, especially in the North America. What's up your sleeve for the future?
I think for us, what I would hope our customers say, and what we like to say, is we're always relentlessly focused on solving our customers' problems. We also obviously have our own problems to worry about. And like I talked about, the challenges facing the mill and the forestry industry. So our heads have been more into the space of, well, is there something we could do to continue to expand our business that will add more value, maybe in a prefabricated system for different building types, like let's say that CLT over thick wall, like perhaps there's something we could do to participate more and offer a more complete solution, while at the same time consuming more of the mill's output to help stabilize that business. So can't say too much more about that question of what we have planned, but all I can say is that's certainly on our mind, and we have some pretty exciting plans and ideas to help continue furthering your business.
Yeah, well, we're excited to see what those plans are when you guys make a big announcement. Through this journey of both Kalesnikoff and yourself in the mass timber space, what lessons have you learned that you would impart to somebody that's listening to this? So like if you could give one or two things that everybody needs to know about mass timber, like what would it be?
I think one of the main things that I would want to impart is it's not that complicated. It certainly has different challenges and different complexities of other construction materials, but some of the most successful projects that we've been a part of have been with partners on the job that have had no experience of mass timber, but they approach it through the lens of a good builder. They ask good questions. They're open-minded. I think that it's something that way too often we think, well, we need a specialist for that. We're not a mass timber specialist. We can't do mass timber. I really don't think that's the case. Like, it's great to have some sort of adult in the room that knows what they're doing. But for the most part, it's kind of an attitude thing. You have to be willing to sit down and look at the screen and look at the drawings and ask tough questions before you show up on site, because you really do live and die by that model. But if you're willing to do that and kind of listen and educate yourself, you can absolutely be successful. There's no barrier to entry.
Who do you look up to? Has there been inspiration in your journey? Have you had any mentors that have really helped kind of, follow the breadcrumb trail on where you need to go?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in my career. I think that I have made a lot of pit stops touch different segments of the industry, ranging from consulting engineer to development manager to the guy standing out in the rain tilting concrete panels. I think at every step of the way, like I really learn from people who've encouraged me to be a good learner. And I think that too many people to name and give things to in this one forum. But I think that the biggest thing that I've learned in my career is that the most important thing you can be is a good learner in your career. And with that kind of growth mindset, you can really accomplish just about anything.
Okay. Some people don't understand the mass timber industry, meaning there's an incredible amount of pre-design phase that takes place. The 1, 2, 3, 4 step of an old traditional model kind of gets thrown out the window because the pre-design phase is where all the cost savings come to place, where, all the engineers, the mass timber manufacturers, just everything in general can come up with this plan. So the speed of delivery and also the speed of completion actually does save you money on your projects. I- How, what do you wish more people knew about how far out they need to start asking, giving you a call? Hey, because I mean, if you have a massive project, it's not like you can turn out all these panels in 3 months. I mean, you have to have an order file, right?
I think different projects will have different lead times. Generally, if you have in your mind, when you're ready to build a mass timber building, if you have your fabricator formally engaged and at the table 6 months before you need material on site, that's going to be a really good metric. But I think the biggest thing with mass timber from an owner's perspective that I would suggest you keep in mind is that you're buying a manufactured material. There's a lot of service component that goes to it, but it's not a commodity thing. So you need to be out there in the market and just pick up the phone and call us, call SmartLab, call whoever and ask us, what are we seeing in the market? Can you have a look at our project? Like for the most part, the mass timber industry is very open and very sharing and giving of people that share and give to it. You'll have no issues finding someone to look at your project and tell you what they think. You don't necessarily need to pay $10, $20, $30,000 for a formal design assist process. Just pick up the phone and ask, and we'll be happy to tell you what we'd recommend for lead times, what if there's any budget busters or construction risk items in your design that we'd flag. Like, for the most part, it's a very open, collaborative industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the ability to just pick up the phone and call somebody and get an answer very quickly from the people that know best is something that's pretty unique to this industry. Like you said, everybody's like very open, very collaborative. And I think that's something that's definitely going to help propel it forward. Before we ask our last question, where can people connect with you in Kalesnikoff?
You can connect with us. Check out our website, check out our LinkedIn, our Instagram. We've got pretty great marketing going, just trying to communicate some of the different initiatives we have going on. And out there, you'll have all the links to our different staff, whether you want some technical support, sales inquiries, etc. Just get on our website and you'll find your way to us.
Got it. All right. So we'll definitely link all that down below so everybody can check out your projects and connect with you guys. Our last question that we like to ask guests is, if you could change anything about the industry, what would you change and why?
I think, someone told me the other day, we were laughing about the challenge on a project, and he said, back when I was your age, I wanted to build cool shit. I've kind of gotten over that pretty quickly because you get your heart broken enough times, was kind of the thesis of his statement. And I've been thinking about that a lot because for the most part, myself included, I spent my whole 20s traveling around North America trying to build the coolest, most technically demanding things there were. Obviously, when you're at that phase in your career, you don't have much of an empathy for the risk of the guy that's signing the checks when he goes out to build that thing. So for me, I think the thing that I would change is I still want to build that cool stuff, but I want to see the industry evolve to a place where the traditional contract delivery model of design, build isn't as prohibitive to innovation, and specifically understanding that these buildings need to be solved collaboratively. They can't be solved in 2 dimensions. So it's really not fair to ask us for a very specific example to develop an LOD 400 3D model. And then if there's issues with that model that we've all spent thousands of hours working together, just point back to your 2D drawing to cover your ass. Like, we need to evolve our project delivery method to be more reasonable from a risk mitigation standpoint of the people that are innovating in the space, because otherwise we're going to discourage innovation. So that's what I would change.
Well, this was a true pleasure, Andrew. I hope a lot of people reach out to you, talk shop, and hopefully some of those projects come into fruition and, become a reality. But before we go, if we do come up to your area, are you going to be able to take us to go surfing?
Yeah, sure. Come surfing, come skiing, come do whatever you want. We'll show you around for sure.
Do they make wetsuits for big lugs like me?
Yeah, all shapes and sizes are welcome. Come
I
on
was
up.
going to say, I've only surfed in Bali. I think I surfed in Maui one time too. I'm not good. I'm just saying it was in 90 degrees, but you were talking about you go out there when there's snow on the banks in a wetsuit, don't you?
Yeah, why not?
I love it. All right, man. Well, this was great. Have a good day out there. Hey, we'll see you at the International Mass Timber Conference.
Cool. See you guys there.
All right,
Yeah.
take care. Bye.